The wind carried dust like a curse that evening, sweeping across the barren land where no grass dared grow. The sun was sinking low, bleeding red into the horizon, and every shadow stretched long and thin like a ghost. A wagon lay broken on the side of the trail. One wheel shattered, the other half buried in mud. Beside it, a woman knelt in the dirt, her hands trembling as she tried to start a small fire that refused to catch. Two small children, one boy, one girl, huddled beneath a torn blanket, their faces pale with hunger and cold. Her name was Clara Mae. Once, she had been a schoolteacher back in Missouri, proud, kind, and full of dreams. But dreams meant nothing on the trail west. Her husband had promised a better life in the Wyoming Territory, land of promise and endless sky. That promise died with him 2 weeks ago, when fever took him in the night and left her alone with 2 children and no horse, no food, and no hope. The boy, Sammy, asked in a voice so small it broke the silence, "Mama, are we gonna die out here?" Clara's throat burned. She brushed his hair with fingers that felt like bone. "No, sweetheart. The Lord's still watching us. We just gotta hold on." But even as she said it, her eyes drifted toward the trail, the long, empty line that disappeared into the west. She hadn't seen another soul in 3 days. Then came the sound. Hooves. Distant at first, then closer, heavy and sure. Her heart leapt. She rose, clutching the blanket around her shoulders, squinting through the haze of dust and fading light. A rider was approaching. He came out of the dusk like something from a dream. Tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered, his coat dark and worn, hat tilted low against the wind. The horse beneath him was a great black stallion, muscles rippling like shadows. The man slowed as he neared, eyes sharp and watchful. "Ma'am?" His voice was deep, steady. "You need help?" Clara's lips trembled. She couldn't speak for a long moment. Her voice finally came as a whisper, weak and cracked. "Sir, please take my children." For a second, he didn't move. The words hung in the air like a prayer and a confession all at once. "Take your children?" he repeated softly, sliding from his horse. "Ma'am, I don't think I follow. They're starving," she said, falling to her knees. "We haven't eaten in 2 days. I can't go on. But they can. Please, take them. Give them a chance." The man stood still, his shadow long across the ground. His face was rough, handsome but weathered, the kind of face that had seen more winters than it wished to remember. He looked at the children, then at the woman trembling in the cold wind. "Ma'am," he said finally, his voice low, "I ain't taking your children anywhere without you." Her eyes lifted, startled. "What?" She breathed. He knelt beside her, removing his hat. "Name's Eli Carter. I've got a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Plenty of food, a warm fire, and folks who could use some help around the place. You come with me, you and the young'uns. We'll see to it you're safe." Clara looked at him like she was afraid to believe it. Why would you do that?" Eli looked away for a moment, eyes fixed on the dying sun. "'Cause once, someone did the same for me." The silence stretched between them, filled with the cry of wind and the creak of the broken wagon. Clara's tears came quietly, streaking the dust on her face. She nodded. Eli helped her stand, lifted the children into his saddle, then helped her climb up behind them. "Hold on tight," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "You're safe now, ma'am." As the horse turned north toward the unseen ranch, the last light of the day fell on Clara's face. A face that had known despair, and now maybe a small flicker of hope. Behind them, the broken wagon was swallowed by the night. The trail to Eli's ranch wound through lonely hills and dry riverbeds, lit only by the moon. Clara's arms wrapped around her children as the horse galloped through the darkness. And for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. When they reached the ranch, she saw lights. Warm, flickering lanterns that glowed like beacons in the dark. A wide porch stretched across the front of the house, and the smell of bread and wood smoke filled the air. "Welcome to Carter Ridge," Eli said, dismounting and helping her down. "It ain't much, but it keeps the cold out." An older woman opened the door, gray hair, kind eyes, apron dusted with flour. "Lord have mercy, Eli," she said, rushing forward. "Who've you brought home this time?" "A family that needed help," he said simply. Mrs. Clara Mae and her young'uns. The woman's name was Martha. She took the children's hands, leading them inside, fussing over their thin faces and torn clothes. Come on now, darlings, let's get you by the fire. I'll fetch some stew. Eli turned to Clara. You're safe here, miss. You and your little ones can stay as long as you need. She looked up at him, her eyes full of quiet gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Eli, he said. Just Eli. For a moment, neither of them moved. Something unspoken hung between them. The kind of silence that carried weight, like the pause between two heartbeats. That night, as Clara sat by the fire with her children sleeping beside her, she listened to the wind outside and thought of the man who had appeared like an angel on horseback. She didn't know who he truly was, or what story lay behind those calm gray eyes. But she knew this. Fate had not forgotten her yet, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and the hunger, something warm began to stir again, something she hadn't felt since her husband was alive. Hope. Morning sunlight spilled across the plains like liquid gold, washing over the Carter ranch. The land seemed endless, fields of dry grass swaying gently, the distant hum of cattle and the faint clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoing near the barn. Clara stood on the porch, her children laughing somewhere by the well, and for the first time in months, she felt the warmth of a home again. She watched Eli from a distance. He moved with quiet strength, carrying feed for the horses, checking fences, giving orders with a calm tone that made men listen. He wasn't loud, not like other ranchers she'd met on the road. There was a stillness about him, the kind that came from long sorrow and hard living. When he caught her watching, he gave a faint smile. "You're looking better," he said, walking up with his hat in hand. "Thanks to you," she replied softly. "The children. They've slept through the night for the first time since—" She paused, her throat tightening. Eli didn't ask her to finish. Instead, he nodded toward the field. Sometimes all folks need is a place to rest and a little kindness. The rest comes after. She studied him for a moment, then asked, "You talk like a man who knows about loss." His eyes shifted away. "I do." She waited, but he didn't say more. And somehow she understood. Days passed. Clara helped Martha in the kitchen, mended clothes, and read to the children by the fire. At night, she'd sometimes hear Eli outside talking softly to his horse or walking alone by the barn. The loneliness in his voice made her heart ache. One evening, as the sky turned purple and the crickets began their song, Clara stepped outside. Eli was sitting on the fence, watching the sunset, a bottle beside him. "You always sit out here alone?" she asked gently. "Old habits," he murmured. "Quiet helps me think." She moved closer. "About what?" He was silent for a long moment. "About the woman I couldn't save." Her breath caught. "Your wife?" He nodded slowly. "Fever took her 3 winters ago." She was with child. "I buried them both under that oak hill yonder." His voice didn't break, but the pain beneath it was clear. Clara sat beside him, the wood creaking under their weight. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He gave a faint nod. "Life out here don't give much mercy. You learn to keep going, even when your heart's gone?" She looked at him, tears glinting in her eyes. Maybe you're not as alone as you think." He turned to her then, their eyes meeting in the soft dusk. There was no need for more words. Something passed between them, fragile, uncertain, but real. In that quiet moment, the wind brushed across the plains, carrying with it the scent of rain and promise. For the first time in years, Eli felt something stir in his chest. Not sorrow, but a warmth he thought had died with his past. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Clara stood to gather her children inside. Before she went, she looked back once more. "Thank you, Eli," she said softly, "for saving us." He watched her go, her figure framed in the glow of lamplight. And he whispered to the empty fields, "Maybe it's you who's saving me." The next week came with dark skies and restless winds. The plains whispered of rain and trouble. Cattle were uneasy. Horses snorted in their stalls, and Eli could feel the weight of something coming. the kind of heaviness a man feels deep in his bones before a storm or a fight. Clara sensed it too. She noticed how Eli grew quieter each day, his eyes often scanning the horizon as if expecting ghosts to ride out of the dust. When she asked, he only said, "Nothing you need to worry on, ma'am." But his tone told her otherwise. One morning, as Clara was hanging washed clothes to dry, she saw 3 riders approach from the south. They came fast, kicking up dust. Their coats were black with trail grime, and their faces were hard, mean-looking. Eli stepped out of the barn the moment he heard the hooves. The man leading the group, tall, lean, with a scar across his jaw, spat into the dirt. "Been a long time, Carter," he said. Eli's jaw tightened. "Not long enough, Jake." Clara stood still, her hands gripping the wet sheet. She could feel the air shift, the quiet before a gunfight. "Heard you been hiding out here," Jake went on, smirking. "Heard you got yourself a nice ranch, a few hands, even a pretty little widow living under your roof. Reckon you forgot what you owe us?" "I don't owe you a damn thing," Eli said evenly. Jake laughed. "That's so. Funny, I remember you riding with us once. I remember a train job gone wrong and a whole lot of money that never found its way back to the boys." Clara's heart pounded. She looked at Eli, disbelief and fear flickering across her face. He'd ridden with outlaws? Eli took a step forward, his voice low and dangerous. "I walked away from that life, Jake. You should have done the same." "Maybe," Jake said, pulling his reins tight. "But see, we ain't here to talk. We're here to collect. Tomorrow night we come back. You either pay what's owed or we take it, ranch, cattle, and whatever else we please." His eyes slid toward Clara then, a wicked grin forming. "Especially the lady." Before Eli could move, Jake kicked his horse and rode off, the others following. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind. Clara finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Is it true? What he said?" Eli turned toward her, his expression shadowed with shame. "Once, long ago, I did ride with men like him. After my wife died, I lost myself for a while. But I left that behind, Clara. I swear it." She looked at him, torn between fear and the trust she'd begun to feel. "And now they'll come back. They will," he said quietly. "And I'll be ready." That night, the ranch braced for the storm, not just the thunder rolling across the plains, but the violence waiting on the horizon. Eli gathered his rifle, checked every window, and told Clara to keep the children close. As lightning cracked the sky, Clara sat by the fire holding her son and daughter. Rain lashed against the roof and thunder shook the ground. She whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken in years, asking for strength, for Eli, for her children, for herself. Outside, Eli stood under the rain, his coat soaked through, rifle in hand. Lightning lit his face, hard, determined, haunted. He had fought to leave the past behind. But tomorrow it would come riding back. And this time, he wasn't fighting for gold or pride. He was fighting for the woman who had given him a reason to live again. The storm had passed by morning, but the air still smelled of rain and gunpowder. The ground was soft underfoot, and gray clouds hung low over the Wyoming plains. Clara barely slept. Every creak of the old house made her flinch. Every gust of wind made her think of horses coming down the ridge. Eli hadn't slept either. He sat at the table, cleaning his rifle, a cold cup of coffee untouched beside him. "You don't have to do this," Clara said quietly from the doorway. He didn't look up. "Yes, I do. Men like Jake don't stop unless someone makes them." "You could run," she whispered. "Take us, leave this place behind." He lifted his eyes then, gray, tired, steady. "I've been running most of my life, Clara." "Not anymore." Outside, the sun broke weakly through the clouds. The ranch hands had gone into town for help, but Eli doubted they'd return in time. He was on his own. As the day dragged into evening, the sound came. Hooves again, this time closer, slower, more deliberate. Clara's heart pounded as 3 riders appeared at the edge of the field, same as before. Jake dismounted first, his grin cruel and easy. "Told you I'd be back, Carter," he called. "Now let's settle this." Eli stepped out, rifle in hand. "Leave the woman and children out of it. This is between you and me." "Oh, I plan to," Jake said. After you're dead. It happened fast, too fast. Jake's gun flashed first, the shot echoing across the ridge. Eli fired back before the sound even faded. The two other riders tried to circle, but Eli's aim was clean, precise. One went down. The other fled. Then silence. Only the wind moved through the grass. Eli staggered forward, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his shirt. Jake lay on the ground a few feet away, breathing ragged. Clara ran out, dropping to Eli's side. "No!" she gasped. "No, don't you dare!" He pressed a hand to her cheek, eyes filled with pain and something softer. "Easy now. It's not bad," but she could see it was. The blood wouldn't stop. Behind them, Jake groaned. "Should have stayed an outlaw, Carter," he rasped. "You'd have lived longer?" Eli turned his head slightly. "Maybe," he said, voice thin. "But I wouldn't have lived better." With one last breath, Eli raised his rifle and fired. Jake fell still. Clara held him, tears falling onto his face. "You saved us," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Guess that makes us even." "Don't say that," she said, shaking her head. "You're gonna be fine." "You have to be." His gaze softened. "You and those little ones." "You gave me a reason again. Don't let that go, Clara. Promise me." She clutched his hand. "I promise." And as the sky cleared, the wind carried away the last echo of gunfire. 3 days later, the townsfolk buried Eli Carter under the oak hill beside his wife's grave. Clara stood with her children, the wind tugging at her shawl. Martha held her close, whispering prayers. Life went on after that. Clara stayed on the ranch, tending to the land Eli once loved, raising her children where his memory lingered in every sunset and every quiet breeze. Sometimes, at dusk, she'd look toward the fence where he used to sit and feel as if he were still there, watching over them, keeping his promise in silence. In the end, the starving mother had found more than food and shelter on Carter Ridge. She had found love, sacrifice, and the courage to live again.